So can I just check the live streaming is on? It's live. Oh, I make it time. So good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for coming to this full council meeting on the 1st of December. I'd like to start with the evacuation procedure. As you're all aware, if you hear an alarm, it's not a drill because we don't have a practice plan for tonight. So if you can leave the way you came in or by the marked fire exits, if you require assistance, please raise your hand and somebody will come and assist you. And we will all congregate outside what was Yorkshire Bank is now Virgin Money. The next item on the agenda is apologies. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have apologies from Councillor Walmsley.
Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've apologies from Councillors Neil Phillips, Jill Shepherd and Tracy Shepherd.
Right, so tonight's proceedings are being filmed, live streamed and recorded for future broadcast on the Council's YouTube channel. I'm not aware that there is any other filming going on, but everybody should be aware of that. If we can now move on to item 4, the minutes of the last meeting. Is everybody content that they're a true and accurate? No dissent. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 5 then, declarations of interest. These are printed in the agenda and shown online. Are there any other additional declarations of interest? No, thank you very much. We do have a new councillor whose interests aren't shown in the papers, but I'm sure that they will make a declaration in the event that there is an item discussed that they feel they need to make a suitable declaration on. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 6, which is announcements. I have one initial announcement to make, and that is just to thank all of the officers and the staff at the council and also the contractors for the lights, the switch on in the two town centres, Nuneaton and Bedworth, and also Bulkington Village Centre. They were great, and I'd like to record my thanks for them doing that. Councillor Wilson, I believe you. And I think we're going to move to Brent, who's going to, as Chief Executive and Returning Officer, give us the announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A by-election was held for the Barpool ward on Thursday, the 25th of November, and arising from that, Councillor Jamie Hartshorn was elected as the new councillor for Barpool ward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Brent. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a few announcements, but can I start off with saying how lovely it is to actually have, for the first time in this council's history, portraits of Her Majesty the Queen up in the chamber. She has been, to quote Her Majesty herself, a strength and stay of the nation, and I believe as a council we should actually respect and honour Her Majesty the Queen. So moving on to my first announcement, Mr. Mayor, you may have noticed, and others may have noticed, that there are a number of us wearing Christmas jumpers. It has become something of a tradition on the Conservative benches to do so, and we usually also make a donation to whoever the Mayor's charity happens to be. And I'm pleased to say that with the Conservative benches, and I have to also thank the opposition benches for joining in the festive spirit, that we have collectively raised £270 for your appeal, Mr. Mayor, which I am happy to pass over to yourself.
Thank you very much indeed. That's very generous of you. Thank you. It is appreciated.
Following on from that, Mr. Mayor, I would like to welcome Councillor Hartshorn to his place. Regardless of party politics, we all know that undertaking the role of a councillor is a serious undertaking, and that it comes with great rights but also great responsibilities. And so we have actually brought Councillor Hartshorn a welcome present to the Chamber. If I can ask my colleagues to pass this down. I hope he will like the sentiment behind the actual present. I'd also like to state, Mr. Mayor, that today is the first day of our Christmas parking offer, which we are hoping will help the town centres through the COVID recovery. And I am delighted to say that following the June emergency budget, we actually have free car parking throughout Nuneaton, Bedworth and Bulkington throughout the months of December and January. And I already know that it is being well used. And I would encourage any of our residents, and indeed residents from outside the borough, to come and use our award-winning markets. Finally, Mr. Mayor, I do have some, from my perspective, personally sad news, in that I have to inform Council that Councillor Evans will be, as of the end of this council, resigning as Cabinet Member for Public Services. This is because he has been successful in securing a promotion at work, and he has made an honourable decision in saying that he wishes to, that if he's going to be a Cabinet Member, he wishes to give it the time and effort it deserves, so he has stood down to do that. But I wish him every success in his new venture, and I can assure Council that his determination and enthusiasm for representing the residents of Slough will not be diminished in any way, shape or form. That does, however, Mr. Mayor, mean that there is a vacancy on the Cabinet, which is mine to fill, and I can inform Council that Councillor Sue Markham, from the close of Council business tonight, will be taking over as the Cabinet Member for Public Services. Those are all my announcements, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any others? If not, I would like to also welcome Jamie to his place. Congratulations on that. It's very pleasing to know that we have a ward fully represented. Obviously, that's the residents' right. That's what they expect from us, and I'm glad that that's been restored. The other thing I would like to propose, and I hope I'll find a seconder for this, is a vote of thanks to Councillor Evans. Carl's done a really sterling job, a great job, been very active. So
I'd be more than happy to second that, Mr. Mayor, and given his great legacy in the fact that we will actually now get a Bedworth physical activity hub, he has ensured in the 5 months that he has been a Cabinet Member that there has been more done under his portfolio than any of these Labour predecessors in 40-odd years, and that Bedworth will have its future secured and generations enhanced for their life chances moving forwards.
yeah, in that case, then the vote of thanks should be recorded, unless there's any dissent. Nope, that's unanimous. Right, we now move on to item 7, public participation. We have a number of members of the public who want to ask questions tonight, and so we will start with Mr. Christopher MacDonald. If Mr. MacDonald is here, if not, will somebody be who will be reading out the question? So Brent will read the question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. MacDonald's question is, what are the plans for the masonettes in Marston Lane concerning replacement windows, the gas boilers, the pool roofs? I'm told by neighbours the boilers are 20 years plus, as are the windows. There is a section 20 to replace the windows, but this has been put on hold. These properties need to be made energy efficient. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And the response for that, please? Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. To briefly go over this, the windows, currently the contract is out to tender and is due to be awarded by early January. Marston Lane is on year 2 of the programme. The programme is compiled based on age of properties and/or recommendations from our repairs department, and on properties that are beyond repair and require urgent renewal, We aim to have Marston Lane completed in the financial year of 2023-24. Boilers, we have a variety of boiler types on Marston Lane. The upgrade of these is based on the exact type of boiler. Each property has had the availability of parts to maintain them. Where the parts from manufacturer are now obsolete, these take priority for upgrade. This rationale is applied across our entire portfolio, so not just limited to Marston Lane. Marston Lane upgrades are planned from this financial year in through to the 24-25 financial year, depending on the boiler type and per property. And the roofs, we've re-roofed the properties that have been allocated to us as beyond repair and carried out repairs where needed to ensure performance is suitable. The remainder have been programmed for the new tender in 2024 to allow us to carry out the Section 20 notices. Where properties are not leasehold, we are reviewing where we can add properties to the current programme whilst not neglecting properties already scheduled in, and these will be completed prior to the new tender mentioned in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. We can now move on to question 2 from Mr. Peter Rogers. Again, I think, Brent, you're going to read that out.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question is for the portfolio holder for public services. Before the Conservatives were in power, they made a public statement that if they were elected, the charge for green bins would only be £12.50. Why then has my renewal come through at £40? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So I think, Councillor Evans, you're going to respond to that. Thank you.
I am, Mr. Mayor, and it will be my last response as a Cabinet member, I'm afraid to say. But I would like to thank Mr. Rogers for providing me with the opportunity to provide some clarity on this matter. It was a topic in the recent Barpool by-election from the other side of the chamber, and I think it's only right that the council clarifies our position. So in the summer of 2018, the previous Labour Council took the decision to implement a £40 green waste collection charge, despite promising just a few weeks before that they wouldn't introduce such a charge. And at the time, this was because the Labour group was unable to stick to an in-year budget. And that is why the green waste charge was created to create an in-year surplus for the council. As part of the Conservative group's budget setting proposals in February 2019, we were then in opposition. We decided to put forward alternative budget proposals that included slashing the green waste charge down to £12.50. I understand that Mr. Rogers is a resident of Weddington, so I think it's only right to draw Mr. Rogers to the attention of the fact that I actually have the minutes of that meeting from 2019 right here. And I'm afraid to say that our proposals to slash the charge down to £12.50 were rejected. But there's a reason why it was rejected. And that's because a councillor sitting in this chamber tonight decided to abstain on the proposals. Does any member want to have a guess who that member was? It was the Green member for Weddington. And I've got the minutes right here, Mr. Mayor.
Please, can we continue with the meeting? Thank you. What's your point of order, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The answers to the question should be about the question is deviating and taking personal attacks on me about the budget in 2018 when I was against other things, not the green bin charge. I think it's totally outrageous that these personal attacks be made.
Don't make a personal attack yourself, Councillor. We're here to conduct the business of the council on behalf of residents. Please, can we get on with that? Thank you. If the portfolio would like to continue, if you're relaying the facts of what happened, then you're relaying the facts of what happened. If you can stick that's fine. Please continue.
Yes, they are facts, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to provide the minutes for Councillor Kandaka if he wants. I think it's important for residents in Weddington to understand the facts on the matter. Further to this, in our budget proposals in February 2020, we put forward fully costed plans to cut the green waste charge down to £10. Again, I would draw Mr Rogers to the attention of the February 2020 minutes, where again, I quote from the minutes, Councillor Kandaka gave his apologies and left the council chamber at 53 minutes past 7 and therefore did not vote with the Conservative proposals to cut the green waste charge down to £10. Unfortunately, as a result of the Coronavirus Act that was granted royal assent earlier last year, the local elections were delayed by 12 months. And if we had those local elections in May 2020, and if we had took control of the council, I believe that this Conservative council would have cut the green waste charge down to £10. Mr Rogers may have seen the manifesto that we published for May 2021, and I would draw his attention to the fact that under our commitments we did not make any proposals to reduce the green waste collection charge. The new Conservative council officially took control in May, and upon taking control we found out that the previous Labour administration left its budgets in a complete mess, and this new council was left with a black hole of over £1 million. Unfortunately, due to decades of financial mismanagement under continuous Labour councils, we are simply not in the financial position needed to cut the green waste charge further. I'd also make reference to the fact that the government is actively considering changing how local authorities collect waste. In particular, there is a possibility that the government might make it compulsory in the next 18 months for councils to collect green waste for free. The government has said that it will be providing a burdens grant for local authorities to cover this added cost. However, councils must be charging for green waste collections in order for us to benefit from that burdens grant. So, as much as I would like to reduce the green waste charge, I can't risk this authority losing potentially millions in funding from the government through the burdens grant. And I hope this, my response provides clarity to Mr Rogers.
Thank you for that response, Councillor. Right, move on to question 3 from Mr Sam Margrave, who I don't believe is present. So again, the Chief Executive will read the question out.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And this question is submitted for the Leader of the Council. The Coventry Telegraph recently reported the Council is looking at developing new burial land. This is essential so people can lay their loved ones to rest. Labour's Cabinet previously had plans for a super cemetery in Nuneaton that would see my family in Bedworth buried far outside the town they love, making it hard for residents to visit loved ones without a car, as they will be far away in Nuneaton on a site that would be expensive and hard to get to by bus. There was also a disastrous plan to take Attleborough Road recreation ground away from the people of Attleborough, removing a much-needed play area and creating a nightmare for residents of Springfield Road, Mayfield Road and surrounding areas, increasing traffic in an area that already has parking problems. While there needs to be debate on the existing plan to extend Marston Lane with various organisations, and there could well be flooding issues, there must be burial space in Bedworth for Bedworth people and no loss of Attleborough recreation ground or an extension of an already flooding cemetery. Will the Leader of the Council promise the local people that Attleborough won't see the return of Labour's previous plans to put a cemetery on Attleborough recreation ground, and that Bedworth will get its own extra burial space with no return to Labour's super cemetery, but a continuation of burial space for Bedworth people and Nuneaton people in their own towns? Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As this actually comes under Councillor Guttridge's portfolio, he will be answering the question.
Thank you. Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I thank Mr Margrave for the question. The authority is looking at potential new burial sites and have already registered a call for sites as part of the emerging Borough Plan review. This medium to long-term strategy planning of sites is required to ensure that future burial space can be investigated to support local needs. Various sites have been investigated over previous years, and these all require external consultation reports to look at water table levels, ground makeup, and the support potential burial space. The sites mentioned have all been considered, with the Marston Lake site having potential to be extended, taking into consideration that this site is already a cemetery and some of the infrastructure is in place. This would be required to be further developed if the site was identified. As part of the strategy work and new policies now being developed by officers, cemetery space will be reviewed as to the most viable options available for the council to move forward with burials. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, if we can have question 4, I can see that Mrs. Michelle Condecourt is here, if you would like to submit your question.
Thank you. I see from the figures that were presented at the Finance and Public Services OSP that the Council has reduced its expenditure on food and occupational safety, health promotion and inequalities, land drainage and emergency planning, whilst expenditure is forecast to be over budget on corporate management, democratic representation and management, and morality. Can the Cabinet Member for Finance explain these variances, which appear to take money from making the borough safer for the residents and increase spending on more managerial roles? Thank you.
Councillor Croft, could you answer that? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shall answer that question with the greatest pleasure, and it requires a substantial answer because I do regret to say the question is somewhat misleadingly phrased, because it implies in its phrasing that we are cutting some areas of expenditure to finance others. Now, that is obviously not what has happened. That is not how local government finance works. Were we to via monies between budgets or reopen the budget, we would say so, just as we did in the emergency budget in June. These figures are projections of in-year spend versus the February budget. And there are constant updates throughout the year because monies are spent at different rates in different areas. Sometimes we find cheaper ways of doing things. Sometimes there are delays in projects or works, and sometimes we find that money doesn't need to be spent because the work becomes superfluous. Spending public money is not an end in itself. It is simply a means to an end. Now, Mr. Mayor, I would normally give someone the benefit of the doubt because financial statements can be quite hard to read sometimes, but Mrs. Condecourt is a long-standing attender of council meetings. She's usually at most cabinets and a perennial candidate for one of the fringe parties in local government elections. So she may say that the variances appear to take money, but she must surely know that they do not. So I shall answer, secondly, Mr. Mayor, some of the issues that she raises on the underspends. So the main reason for underspends is quite simply staffing issues. Across this authority, we know that we have trouble at the moment hiring people. So with food and occupational safety and land drainage, we do not have officers in post to do the works. And with the health promotion and inequalities, quite frankly, Mr. Mayor, we have actually made efficiencies. So we are doing the same work for less money. In all of these cases, and I will stress this, the budget provision is still there. It just has not yet been drawn down on. But we haven't cut anything, Mr. Mayor. The budget is still there. It has not been changed. Thirdly, in terms of the overspend that she mentions, the same point substantially applies. Sometimes there are changes in years. Sometimes prices increase or more work is required than was initially projected. So, for example, in the corporate management costs, a lot of that is transaction charges that we have to pay in order to pay people. And I will just say, Mr. Mayor, parenthetically, that the FY21 budget was set by the previous Labour administration, and given the in-year variance of £500,000 that we are now discovering, I think it shows that their record of financial planning was not entirely credible. And neither, Mr. Mayor, are their plans gospel. We are not bound by their strategic priorities or their political plans. The fact that there, and I'll say as an aside, Mr. Mayor, the fact there are now 6 of them and 25 of us suggests the public substantially take that view. And as a result, Mr. Mayor, some departures are inevitable because the priorities of the new administration will be different. And we sometimes find some areas that require more money. And it was not very many weeks ago that Mrs. Condacor at Cabinet was talking about the fact that we are not competitive in terms of hiring. Now, I agree. But in terms of corporate management, there will need to be more corporate spend in order to become more competitive on pay. So, in terms of the democratic representation and management issue that she raises, I make absolutely no apologies for that, because quite frankly, there is work that needs doing, and we have established the committees to do it, and we've funded the payroll costs to carry that work out, whether that is greater and more practical overview and scrutiny, or whether it is improved corporate governance through our employment committee, or whether it's restoring civic pride through the new Jubilee committee, or the civic honours committee. It all costs money. And I must say, I'll just take this opportunity to say that our democratic services officers have been absolutely magnificent in carrying out that work. Very short notice and sometimes short-staffed. And it will not escape your attention, Mr. Mayor, that there was a completely unnecessary by-election last week that cost this authority somewhere in the region of £10,000, and which could have been completely avoided had the former member for Barpool sat tight for 6 weeks, or better yet, carried out her duties to her residence and remained in post for the remainder of her term. And in terms of the mayoralty, I will just say in closing that there has not been any sort of substantial overspend on the mayoralty. As you well know, Mr. Mayor, it is an accounting quirk in the figures that were presented to OSP. Money has not yet been pro-rated out to other budgets like events and IT and all the rest of it. And I will just take this opportunity to point out that I don't think any mayor has made such a sacrifice of losing £20,000 in a flash car to focus on the real purpose of the job, which is serving the people and providing ceremony and colour in our civic life. So thank you very much. So had the opposition, so the question is not valid. It is, I reject the premise of it entirely, and had the opposition taken that sort of attitude to public duty and financial management, then there might be more of them in this chamber today. As it is, there they sit, alone and palely loitering. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. If we can...
Please.
If you really want to, please.
I don't like it, the phrasing, if you really want to. It's really, really rather putting us down. I don't appreciate it. There are 2 points I want to make. One is I do not like being
I'm sorry,
I'm
sorry, Mrs. Condacor. You're not here to make points. If you want to ask supplementary questions, I'm prepared to allow that.
The question is, why do you refer to me as member of a fringe party when I am here as a member of the public, irrelevant as to what party I belong to? I just expect answer to my question. And the other thing is, you say, oh, the democratic extra spending on democratic representation and management is due to because you've put all these extra committees and what have you in. In your paraphernalia that you put out before the election, you said that you were going to reduce the spending on all the cabinet members and what have you, and in effect you've actually increased it. And all the subcommittees and what have you that you say, you have all said that you're not going to actually increase the amounts.
Mrs. Condacor, you're repeating the second question, so I'll come back to Councillor Croft to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, it's a matter of long-standing public record, Mrs. Condacor's public career in local politics. I mean, it's not a major party, it's not a serious party, it's on the far fringe of the spectrum. In terms of her substantial point, again, it is somewhat misleading because we very much did cut the cabinet allowances. Every member of this cabinet is paid £1,000 less than members of the previous administration because we got more work for the same money. In fact, I think it was roughly a £14 saving in the end, the way we divided it out. The committee work is different. The committee is actual work, and we have to pay for officer time and printing. That is where the money is coming from, because while we are happy to do work to improve things for the people for less money, because the reward for public life is public progress, we couldn't ask our officers to do more work for less money. So let's not be misleading. Let's be accurate with what we're putting out there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor. If we can move on to question 5. I understand this is from Mr. Carl Mayer, but he's also not present, so Chief Executive will again read this one out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this is a question for the portfolio holder for Planning and Regulation. At the full council on the 14th July 2021, this council passed a motion regards the borough plan. Part of this motion passed on the night into council policy was that this council steps away from the memorandum of understanding with Coventry, which on flawed figures imposed over 4,000 houses on this borough. So my question to the portfolio holder is, can he tonight guarantee 100% that this council will not accept the memorandum of understanding overspill of 4,020 houses from Coventry before the end of the current borough plan review, now in 2024? And if not, will all the sites in the current plan possibly have obtained planning permission before the review is finished, deeming the review obsolete? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So, Councillor Smith, can you answer that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the question and the opportunity to update everyone on the work that's going on with the Borough Plan Review. As you know, the Borough Plan was adopted in 2019, and following the change of control at the Council after the May elections this year, we made a commitment to kickstart an immediate review. This work is now being undertaken at pace, and we're committed to ensuring that this review is thorough and robust and results in a sound plan that will satisfy housing need up to 2038. It's important that the public and elected members can have their say in the development of this review, and we commenced this process in June this year by undertaking a significant consultation, the outputs of which will help shape the early stages of the review itself. During this consultation, it was clear to me that there's a big gap between consulting on the scope of the plan, which is what we've done, to then informing the public of the level of growth we'll be planning for and the sites we want to allocate to meet future growth. As well as considering this, we, together with our local authority partners across Warwickshire and Coventry, commissioned a new HEDNA, that's a Housing and Economic Development Needs Assessment. This will identify sub-regional housing need. The figures produced by this HEDNA will be adjusted to reflect the outputs of the National Census when they're made available in the spring of next year. This will ensure we're working with the most up-to-date evidence. Once we have a new target of housing numbers, we can commence discussions with the other Warwickshire boroughs and districts, along with Coventry City, to reach an agreement and a new memorandum of understanding that will satisfy our duty to cooperate, or at a minimum, produce a statement of common ground. This will be necessary to satisfy the inspector that we have a sound plan. As of today, I have no idea what the definitive housing number projections will be across the sub-region, and will not know this until next spring. However, unlike our predecessors, we recognise we have a duty to cooperate with our partners, not a duty to capitulate. For these reasons, I will be bringing a report to Cabinet suggesting we extend the timetable and add an additional stage of public engagement to the review process. This will ultimately extend the time it takes to get the plan adopted to early 2024. However, I'm confident that the timetable will enable wider public engagement and ultimately result in a better prepared plan which has more chance of being found sound. With respect to the Memorandum of Understanding and the wider issue around housing growth, the authority has made its position clear with respect to the currently adopted Memorandum of Understanding, from which we have withdrawn our signature in July. We've also been informed after contacting the Secretary of State that there is no chance of a moratorium being imposed. that would stop development of major sites. And therefore, we must make decisions based on the currently adopted plan until the review is complete. I can't say yet what future level of growth we'll be planning for. This must be informed by emerging evidence along with the duty to cooperate engagement. With respect to those allocations that are identified within the current plan that do not benefit from any sort of planning permission, it is correct to say that an application could be submitted ahead of the plan review being completed. If planning applications are submitted for allocated sites, then the authority will be duty-bound to determine them. What I can say is that part of the review process, all existing allocations are being reviewed to assess their suitability, and this will need to be considered in the context of housing need, which, as I've already explained, is still to be understood. It is important to be aware that we have committed to a full review of that plan, and therefore it's not simply housing allocations being considered. The review provides the opportunity to assist with town centre regeneration, climate change and all other planning policy matters. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. That concludes that agenda item. We will now move on to item 8, questions from members. First question I have is from Councillor Condacor to the Leader of the Council. Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. It is very disappointing that I'm not allowed to attend, as an observer, the Town Deal Board meetings, which track the progress of the projects that have been awarded a possible £23.2 million in funding. I understand there's a requirement to have the final business case signed off for all these projects early next year to avoid some of the funding being withdrawn, some of the project funding being withdrawn. The public documents list the project but do not give something like a red, green, amber risk status for each of the projects at the moment. Could the Leader please update the Council tonight on any of the individual projects that are of amber or red rating? Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Town Deal Board meetings, whilst mainly made up of non-councillors, still constitute a meeting of this Council. If Councillor Condacor had asked officers this question, he would have easily found that information out for himself. Similarly, as this is a meeting of the Council, the agenda papers and minutes are available online for him to review at his leisure. Subject to the requirements of the Local Government Act 1972 regarding confidentiality, any member of the public is entitled to attend. Links to the remote meeting can be provided upon request. And so can Councillor Condacor. Having checked with my officers, they have confirmed that no such requests from him have been received. In relation to the individual projects, as the Town Deal Board does not meet until this Friday, I cannot comment on their status. I am able to advise that at October's board meeting, information was provided to advise that each project is on track to complete and submit their business cases and summary documents within agreed timescales. As a Town Deal Board member, I don't chair this, by the way, Mr. Mayor, I am just a member of it, along with mainly other businesses and other interested town centre parties. I have asked the chairman of the board to consider at Friday's meeting whether the RAG status of the project should be published under any other business. As a postscript, I have actually had a response from Sean Farnell, who is the chair of the Town Deal Board, and he has confirmed he has no issue with having the matter considered under any other business and representations can be made then. So I've done as much as I can on that, but it is up to Councillor Condacor as to whether he attends a public meeting of this council.
Thank you, Councillor. Question 2 is from Councillor Damon Brown, and it's submitted to the portfolio holder for Housing and Communities. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member for Housing and Communities please provide an explanation about the £211,000 Green Homes grant funding that was reported in the local press and on social media as having been returned to the government. Perhaps you can give us some clarification on what part of that was fact and what part of it was actual fake news. Thank you.
Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for your question. So in total, the grant received was £1,410,000, and it was broken up in the following way. £660,000 went on improving our own council stock. All of this money was spent. £750,000 was paid into private sector housing applications. So anybody that's not a council tenant, people that own their own homes, etc., etc. From this £750,000, £211,000 did have to get paid back to government. That's where the requirement has come from, not from this council. It's been said in the November the 10th Cabinet that the payback had become, has happened because of a few factors. Councillor Evans pointed it out. I was quite clear about the whole situation. There's nothing, underhand about it at all. Basically, it's due to capacity, due to COVID, wet weather, and the sudden release of millions of pounds into the green home sector has meant there aren't enough contractors to do the volume of work that is being asked. And there aren't enough contractors to do that within the allocated timeframe given by government. So to be clear, this council signed up enough customers to spend every penny of that £1.4 million. It was an excellent achievement by officers, and it shouldn't be underestimated. It took a lot of effort, and it's taken a lot of effort to actually manage it in the way that it's being managed. So council staff need to be recognised for the work on that, and I'm quite happy to do that. Not only this, but on another positive note, it appears, based on the monthly statistics published by BEIS, which is the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, who are the Green Homes grants provider, we are one of the top performing local authorities for the number of homes that have been upgraded. So out of 250 local authorities, we are ranked the 5th best. And that's even on top of having to pay back the £211,000. So we've also been successful with the next round of the Green Homes grant. Because of this, it's been agreed that customers that are still waiting for work or who have potentially had to give their money back in theory will be rolled over and will automatically get covered by the next round of the Green Homes grant, so no one will lose out. They won't lose their place in the queue, they won't have to go back from the start, and the problems won't be reiterated. All of this, again, point out, it was all discussed openly in the public with engagement from opposition leaders, leader of the Labour group, at the Cabinet meeting on the 10th of November. You did ask a question, the answer was given, you didn't indicate you wasn't satisfied with the answer at the time. So now to address the fake news element of your question. There has been fake news surrounding this. On the 17th of November, the Nuneaton Labour group published a Facebook post, which is here, about this paying back of the Green Homes grant. It wasn't just misleading, it was actually dishonest. And it was only made worse by the fact that the leader of the Labour group was the person doing my role before I took it on, so should be fully versed in what's going on with the Green Homes grants. There's quite a bold declaration, again, here. £211,000 handed to the Tory-run Nuneaton and Bedworth Council to spend on green homes. They failed to spend it, and now they are handing it back to government. This Conservative group was not handed £211,000. So we couldn't have failed to spend it. The Labour group, you yourself, know this. So just when you think that, we've reached peak desperation, they ratchet up a notch. what I'm really annoyed about on this is the leader of the Labour group, yourself, Councillor Watkins, was the person on social media publicly blaming the Conservative group. But you were the one doing this before me.
Yep, Councillor Watkins.
I wasn't on social media, so I don't know what Councillor Gold was on about. I did ask a question at Cabinet, and it was said that £211,000 was handed back. Councillor Golby has just admitted that £211,000 was handed back to the government. Thank you.
Can I...
Do you want to continue?
I do want to continue, yes. You are quoted in the Facebook page. You are quoted in there. I mean, it does actually say, leader of the Labour opposition and Nuneaton and Bedworth councillor, Chris Watkins, and then you're quoted. So to say that you don't know anything about it, you might want to have a word with your comms team about that. So, I mean, not only have you posted this under the Nuneaton Labour group, with yourself being quoted, you actually paid to boost the post, which is here. You paid to boost it to up to 10,000 people. That's all public. It's all publicly available. So you're paying to spread a deceitful fabrication, which it is.
Yes, Councillor?
Councillor Golby is once again indicating that I've paid to boost the page. I haven't paid anything. I can assure you, you can see my bank account. There's nothing come out of our bank account. You've just said that I've paid for it. I haven't paid for it. Yep. Well, get your facts right.
Yeah, I think, Councillor, it was fairly clear when she had referred to Nuneaton Labour that that's what she was referring to, but you have clarified for everybody watching that it wasn't you, so thank you.
I mean, that coming from the Labour group, that is an absolute joke.
Councillor,
can I get on, please? Can I finish my...
Yeah, if you can wrap that up, that'd be great.
So
Thank you.
to be clear, Nuneaton Labour sponsored and paid for this ad. That is publicly available information. All the details of the advert is publicly available, so that's how I know it was paid, it was boosted to go up to 10,000 people. So, what I will say is Labour, Nuneaton Labour, have paid to spread this deceitful fabrication. And I would actually question, is it incompetence that you didn't know the facts of this, or are you just willfully misleading residents of the borough? Either way, it's stunningly bad judgment.
Thank you, Councillor. If we can move on to question 3.
Sorry, supplementary question on that?
Yep, sure.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just based on what we've heard, I'd just like to ask the Cabinet member that's responded then, do you agree with me that the Labour group paid to boost fake news?
Councillor, I think if you can keep this brief, thank you.
Yes.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Brown. Thank you, Councillor Golby. If we can move on to question 3, Councillor Sekovic.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. So my question tonight is to the leader of the council or to the portfolio holder. And I'd like to first of all start by expressing my thanks to council officers for all their hard work in putting up the Christmas lights and decorations and for all their hard work on the night. These events do not just happen, they take months of planning, and I was very pleased that the council purchased £40,000 worth of lights and displays back in June, something which the previous Labour administration should have done a long time ago. Due to circumstances, however, beyond the council's control, the lights did not arrive. Once again, I commend the officers who rose to the challenge to ensure that Nuneaton, Bedworth and Bulkington had lights to switch on, especially as so many of the existing displays were either broken or unserviceable due to lack of inward investment into the communities of this borough by the previous Labour administration. Each year, however, the display in Bulkington gets smaller and smaller with less and less variety. As the third settlement of our borough, we do not expect something as large as Nuneaton, but we would like an event which is proportionate to our size and standing in the borough. Could I ask the portfolio holder, how can we ensure that next year's display will be better, and how can we turn the market and fun fair into a larger, thriving and more vibrant event with an even greater selection of attractions?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll start by apologising for the length of the answer, because there have been some developments even today since I wrote my original reply. But firstly, I would like to echo Councillor Kovetkovic's thanks to all the officers and Glendale workers who have worked behind the scenes to make all 3 of our Christmas light switch-ons a success. It has been a very challenging year, but we were able to put on shows across our borough that everyone can be proud of. I can assure Lubs that we are constantly working to improve the Christmas offer, and I have asked officers to begin the planning for Christmas 2022 in the new year. As leader, I made a decision to move the switch-on events in all 3 centres from a Sunday to Friday or Saturday nights so as to make them more family-friendly and accessible. The Labour way of doing things meant that on a Sunday you had the hassle of also being worried about the start of the working week and getting kids ready for school in the morning. Having these events on Fridays and Saturdays meant that more people were able to attend. And they did. These changes were well received by both the public and the businesses, and I can confirm that attendance was jam-packed in all 3 centres. However, it did cause some logistical issues for the fairground operators, which were further exasperated in Bulkington by their concerns over the weather. With greater notice of the dates next year, I hope we can resolve these issues moving forwards. In addition, 90% of our existing Christmas lights were no longer serviceable. If the last administration had got their act together after the lights were taken down in January and began the process of replacing the worn-out units, we would not have had this problem. This meant we had to order new displays, and there were supply chain issues in receiving these. Fortunately, replacements were provided on loan by the supplier to ensure the events were not compromised. A full inventory of the new lights and any remaining serviceable lights will be pulled together in the new year, where the light coverage for each centre can be reviewed, and where necessary, and budget permitting, any additional light requirements can be considered. By way of an update, Mr Mayor, I had a meeting with the head of town centres today, and we did speak about this very issue, and he has confirmed that whilst there was a budget of £40,000 for the new lights, which we set in the emergency budget at the end of June, we did actually underspend slightly on that, so I have authorised him to see what we can actually get extra for the remaining capital spend that was there. That will very much depend on whether we can actually get them up this year, but since we've allocated the money already, I'm keen to ensure that even if they can't go up this year, they are available for next year. But I would like to finish, Mr Mayor, on a positive note. I received an email, and it's quite unusual to get quite a positive email in my inbox these days, from the officers, and they sent to me an email from a business owner in Bulkington, and I thought that council would like to actually hear from someone directly involved in the Christmas light switch on. I won't divulge their name because I don't think that's appropriate, but it says, as a business owner, Friday was a roaring success. We had been a part of Christmas lights since the beginning and was part of the original fundraisers. We were very pleased with the footfall on the night, and I know the other businesses feel the same. The village cafe and several residents put some lovely pictures on Facebook, and we all felt that the people we came in contact with had a great time. Unfortunately, the keyboard warriors who don't support the local businesses and haven't been part of this occasion before were very negative, but these are the same people who were commenting that we should raise funds for a real Christmas tree. As you know, we have a real Christmas tree, which someone has worked really hard on and was out decorating it in the rain. The weather can't be helped, but I think it was kind in the end and people truly had a great time. You and your team should be extremely proud to have pulled off a successful event with the challenges that you had against you. We will look forward to doing it all again next year. And I think that sums it up, Mr Mayor. We've had a cracking year this year, and we look forward to an even better year next year.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. If I can now come to question 4 from Councillor Chris Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. This is for the portfolio holder of Housing and Communities. I understand that all of the external fire risk assessments have now come back with a large number of actions to be taken by the council. Can the portfolio holder for housing and communities please give me a timescale of when these works will be completed, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All emergency priorities, i.e. those needed within 24 hours, have been completed. We are currently in the process of prioritising the further works and also evaluating the budget associated with these through the housing team. So that will have to be done before I can advise of a full time frame. Thank you.
Point of order, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Under 4.10.6, can I ask this matter referred to a scrutiny committee? I think it's a Housing, Health and Environment Scrutiny Committee. I think I need a second for that. Thank you.
Can you run that by me again? Under what?
Yeah, on page 36 of your agenda at the very top, it outlines that any member may refer an issue then to a scrutiny committee or cabinet, and I think it's a scrutiny committee I'd like this referred to. So it's page 36 of your paper agenda, right at the top.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to second that. As leader of this new administration, we're quite happy to be scrutinised unlike the previous one.
In that case, is there any dissent? Because these matters are not for debate. In that case, I'll take that as unanimous, and if we can make a suitable note. Thank you, Brent. Right, that concludes item 8, and we are on to item 9, special urgency decisions. I'm not aware there's been any. As there have been none, we will move on to item 10, Cabinet Report. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The Cabinet Report has been circulated as an addendum, and as usual, myself and other Cabinet members are happy to answer any questions that may arise. But what I would say, Mr Mayor, is that yet again this report shows that this new Conservative administration is getting on with the people's priorities and delivering what we said at the election and in our manifesto. What I would also like to highlight is the fact that we have had the corporate peer review from the Local Government Association, which was largely positive. Some challenges in there which we are more than willing and able to take up, but Cabinet and officers are already working on that very thing, and we are looking forward to a return visit in March. But what it did say was that we work tremendously well with our partners, and that our staff are second to none, and that they are loyal to this authority through thick and thin. And also I would like to highlight that there is work going on the West Midlands Combined Authority Board that I have been getting stuck in trying to network and get Nuneaton and Bedworth out there on the regional map, and we are starting to have some success, and that Andy Street is engaging with me as leader, and that we are showing some early tentative signs of actually building up a rapport and collaboration. I think it's safe to say that with networking with the Combined Authority, the Chancellors of the universities, the LEP and County Council, we are actually, as a new administration, getting Nuneaton and Bedworth on the map and trying to do our best, which is a far cry from the previous two Labour leaders who sat on their hands, were insular and did nothing.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Any member questions? Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much. I have two areas of I want to raise. I think the first one is the West Midlands Combined Authority. I must congratulate the leader on taking a more active role in the authority. That is a very positive step. But I am concerned on the back page of it, the last bullet point, about the leader expressed an interest in the Housing and Land Board and talks about considering projects in the borough. That can be read two ways. One way is we're putting forward even more stuff to be developed, or hopefully the better way is that some of the stuff is being developed. We'll actually try and put forward plans to get better infrastructure on there, sewage, train stations, etc. So it would be useful if the leader would clarify those discussions about potential projects. And tied in with that, on the front of that page, it talks about the West Midlands Rail. And I'm really keen we get some of these Wellington Station entrance and Stocking Forward Station progressed, and if the leader could indicate whether those things have been raised at these meetings. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. In relation to the combined authority on the final page and the Housing and Land Board, that is specifically referring to regeneration projects, so like the town centres in both Nuneaton and Bedworth. Nothing has been discussed about housing, which I am very aware is a very contentious issue in Nuneaton and Bedworth, but this is specifically looking at any angle we can go out there and get some regeneration funds for, in addition to what we are already doing, the county is doing, and the funding we have had from central government. Indeed, in the meeting that I had with Andy Street last Monday in Birmingham, he indicated that he is looking for other non-constituent members to come forward, A, to take a more proactive role in the combined authority, which I am seeking to do, but also there are 4 pots of money there which he is very keen for non-constituent members to bid for. The Chief Executive is delighted with this news and has passed that on to the Director, and we are trying to see if we can get any traction there, and we are looking at trying to arrange a meeting with the combined authority officers to see where Nuneaton and Bedworth can fit into this map. In relation to train and rail infrastructure, I am very aware that Nuneaton is essentially the conduit between East and West Midlands. And so one of the things that we are looking at is whether we can get any of our regeneration projects in the investment prospectus. We have our own prospectus which we put out for MIPIM and Co, but having Andy Street and the West Midlands Combined Authority added to that may get some more traction, and if something like the transport hub is something we can build upon, then I'm willing to try and do that. But I am conscious we aren't a constituent member, but I am willing to use all the levers at my disposal to try and focus whatever energies Andy Street can throw our way, given the fact we aren't a massive constituent member, but he is certainly keen to ensure that our voices are heard, and I am shouting as loud as I can in those corridors of power. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm sure across the piece everybody wishes you and the Chief Executive and officers every success with those endeavours. Councillor Kenner.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In section 2.A of the report, you can see Cabinet approved new support measures for businesses. Now, I understand this was under Councillor Wilson's name at the time, but I would like to ask Councillor Croft, as the portfolio holder for finance, if you could update Council on those new schemes and their implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr Mayor, I won't speak at such length this time. I'm so glad someone asked. This is the second tranche of our ARG support, because we spent the first roughly £3.5 million before the end of July at the start of the year, and we decided to do more creative things with it rather than just have block application grants. So just to give the members of the public and the council an update, the market trader scheme, where we give free rent to our regular traders and half rent to our casual traders, is live now and is live till the end of the financial year. The Shopfront Enhancement scheme is live now as well, and we are getting some applications, but I would encourage all businesses, wherever you may be, any shop in the borough, to apply for it. All of our towns have suffered about 50, 60 years of modern architecture, and this is our chance to try and beautify the place, make it look nicer, attract visitors. So I would encourage any shopfront to apply. The other 2 major schemes from that were the Business Recovery and Growth Scheme and the SME Hardship Scheme. They will be going live very shortly. We have a target date of the 6th of December, and the reason we've delayed it is because the administration of the previous schemes wasn't very satisfactory. They were essentially organised through Excel sheets, and we've hired some staff to do a proper administration of it through the proper software. So again, I would just publicly encourage any business in the borough, if you want to expand, if you want to make some capital investment, if you want to refurb your business, there is potentially £15,000 worth of grant available for you from the council. So go on the website and apply for it. And I would encourage all members to spread the good news. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you very much. Can we just confirm these are grants? They are not repayable, they are not loans or whatever. That's whether it's the last one you were talking about or whether it's the Shopfront one. So please, across the piece, if we can spread that word. Councillor Condacor, you wanted to ask some more questions?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, it's on the air quality, which is the consultation went to Cabinet to launch the consultation. I think it might be Councillor Guttridge responsible for this one. I'm very concerned when I looked at that consultation that the data, if you click on it, it says look at the air quality report, is 2.5-year-old data. We haven't really captured on that stuff and provided the public with information about the continuing poor air quality. And also, I'm very concerned that the revocation of the e-tone thing is suggested as an idea when this scrutiny committee here has always said we need to keep the air quality. So can I ask Councillor Guttridge if we look at those two items to provide more recent air quality information to the consultation and also provide more, change the default to actually keep the air quality management zone around Eton School until we've found the developments, the impact of the developments thrust upon us. Thank you.
Councillor Guttridge.
Thank you, Councillor Condicourt. Yes, I will look at that. I will talk in the morning with the officer concerned and we will come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No one else has indicated, so we will move on from that to item 11, committee panel membership. So this is also the addendum, the one with the table on the front. And I will hand over to Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As a result of the by-election and indeed the Cabinet changes, there are some necessary amendments to committees which have to be made in accordance with the political proportionality rules. So I will move the recommendations as printed with the addendum that because we haven't yet had the Labour answers back as to who will be remaining on the scrutiny panels for business and regeneration and housing, environment and health, that be delegated to the head of paid service in consultation with the leader of the opposition. I would hope that he'll be able to pass those on quickly so that we can get on with that, because there is a business and regeneration OSP coming up next week from memory. So with that amendment, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move it as printed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watkins, did you want to come in at this point?
Apologies for not getting back sooner. I will, if you're okay with it, take that up with Brent and we'll sort it out between us. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That being proposed, is there a seconder? Councillor Golby, thank you.
Yeah, Mr Mayor.
Right, so any dissent? Are we taking that as accepted? No amendments? All in favour? Yep, that's unanimous then. Moves us on to item 12, minutes of the council meeting from the 14th of July. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There was a slight error in the minutes as approved by the previous council. Easily done because it said deputy leader when it should have been deputy mayor, so it was overlooked. So we just need to formally correct the minutes because it was actually moved and approved that it would be the deputy mayor and not the deputy leader on the Platinum Jubilee Working Party.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. So you have moved that. It's seconded by Councillor Gold.
Yes, Chair, as soon as it's me involved, I'm happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, is there any dissent or are we all in agreement? Does anyone have any concerns about this? Good with that, Councillor Watkins? Yeah, we're all good. In that case, with no dissent, I take that as unanimous. Thank you. Right, we now move on to item 13, recommendations from Cabinet and other committees. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like to move the recommendations as printed about introducing Cabinet support members into the Constitution. This is something which is done in many other councils across the country. I believe it gives an opportunity for councillors to develop, provides opportunities for succession planning if necessary, and also it's important to recognise that we do have in a number of departments large projects which need to be done, and that would be of assistance to the portfolio holder because we cannot be everywhere all the time in all things, as much as we try to be. And perhaps if we'd have had more people doing the work, then the last administration wouldn't have actually got into such a mess that we've now had to inherit, because there are a number of areas where policies are woefully lacking, out of date, inadequate, or simply just don't exist. And that is what we are picking up to do. So I move the recommendations as printed, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Beetham.
Very happy to second this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member? Nobody's into... Councillor Condacor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the new administration has an awful lot of work to do. I understand totally why you increased the size of your cabinet. There was obviously the issue about how much people are paid and the split, and that's all political. But I do ask that you consider things like job share. The Green Party's got a longish history of actually having posts that are shared between two people. And I think that's actually a better way than having someone working unpaid to cope, to sort of be extra capacity. And particularly for some of the new intake who effectively shut out a system, I think actually having a cabinet position or any other positions on job share would actually be more valuable, and it would also share the salary and the responsibility. I know it's easier to be a cabinet member when people are retired, and I really notice how well some of the cabinet are doing and how stressed some cabinet members are rushing in from meetings and coming from work, etc. So I don't want to be negative on having assistants, but I do think we need to consider A, having the assistants as a job share, and B, actually the people who are particularly twin hatters have got big positions on both councils, and I think one councillor on your team actually has 4 different positions: a county councillor, a borough councillor, a scrutiny chair at county, and a cabinet member here. I think it's about almost £28,000 worth of jobs. Actually, just keeping the amount of work people take on sensible, so we don't need to actually have overflow councillors, overflow cabinet members. I do hope we get more of the new intake involved in cabinet and other stuff, because they bring a great wealth of experience. Putting politics aside, the more diverse people and the more background people have, the better. So I would ask that the cabinet considers actually allowing job shares. Even if you don't job share in this cabinet, I think actually going forward, people may take on roles if they can actually share a role, particularly some of the big portfolios. You can split like housing into housing and community. So yeah, some of them are such big jobs, there are areas to actually do a job share. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other... Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know why Councillor Condacor just didn't make that and just prefix that with my name, because it was literally all about me. But you did miss off 2 points. Well, 3. I also have a job because I can't afford not to work, unlike some. And I'm a wife and mother too. So why don't you throw that into the mix? Because you do like to highlight everything about people's lives, but you did miss out probably the 2 most important things to me personally, which is my husband and my children. So I'll forgive you for that one. I think actually what we need to do as a cabinet is take a strategic view, which is a point that you've missed. I shouldn't be in the office every day doing people's jobs for them. We employ people to do the jobs. I don't need to be sat on the end of anybody's desk. I need to take a strategic overview, and then my officers implement that strategic overview. Now, I'm not sure why that's so difficult to kind of comprehend, because when you're operating at such a senior level, that's what you have to do. And that is the sort of thing that we have been doing, and unfortunately that was quite lacking in the previous administration, and that's why some of the officers, I do have to say, were almost concerned when you say that they kind of didn't want to be working autonomously just in case they got told off or something, or they overstepped a line or something. That is not how we work. We have a management approach. We are strategic decision makers, not day-to-day decision makers. So I expect my officers to do what they are there to do. They know their jobs far better than I know their jobs. And if that is not the case, then there's a problem. Fortunately for me, my teams are brilliant. I couldn't ask for a better set of officers than I've got in my teams. So the job share element is just, it might work for the Greens, certainly not going to work for me, I'm afraid. And if it comes to a point where I'm, running 10 minutes late for a meeting, well, life gets in the way. Sometimes that happens. There's not a single person in here that hasn't ever happened to, and probably you included. So it's just the way it works. And also, when you have a life and you have outside interests, you actually get a better view of the world because you're not insular. You meet people, you talk to people, you get different viewpoints. That all helps me to be a better representative. I don't just pontificate from on high. I actually have an active role within the community that I live in, with the community that I represent, and all the other factors that I'm involved with. So thank you for your concern, but I don't need it. Save it for somebody else, not me.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there anybody else? Anyone else? Oh, Carl, Councillor Evans, you indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak briefly on this. Absolutely support it. I mean, given I've probably got about an hour left in Cabinet, it's not really going to concern me. But I do echo what Councillor Golby has said. I think in comparison to previous cabinets on this council, this cabinet is a much younger, more dynamic, more strategic-looking cabinet, and I think that was backed up in the most recent Local Government Association report that we got. Councillor Gutty is young in comparison to previous cabinet members. He certainly is. He certainly is. And whilst it is absolutely a decision for the leader of the council, I do hope the leader does bring some of our new intake into those new positions. I don't actually agree with what Councillor Kandaka has said. As a cabinet member dealing with things like refuse, leisure centres, actually it's been most of my cabinet member casework has come from the 2021 intake. I mean, Councillor Cooper, for example, he's on me every day about issues in Camp Hill, and he's achieved a lot since May.
Well done, Councillor Cooper.
And likewise, Councillor Singh, for example, is quite big on fly tipping in Bedworth Heath. So I don't accept that the new intake are not involved with the process. They absolutely are. I mean, the other point I'd make to Councillor Kandaka is we as a cabinet have made ourselves open. I actually made the point that last Friday I was going to do a virtual surgery. Councillor Kandaka didn't request a surgery appointment. So, but I absolutely support it, and I will be voting in favour.
Thank you very much, Councillor. There's no one else. Councillor Beetham, did you want to come back in as a seconder?
I've got to say, as a backbencher and one of the new intake, I very much see this as an opportunity for every backbencher and new intake and every member here, and have complete faith that it will be done in a way that burden is shared and focus is put on projects that need to be done, considering there is a large amount of big projects, big new projects coming up and in the middle, and Cabinet having that support will make that role easier on them to focus on what they need to. So that'd be me.
Thank you, Councillor. 13A. Yes, indeed you do. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of job sharing, that isn't going to happen. We saw what happened when we had 2 executive directors, and in my view, and I was never a fan of this, and Brent knows this, that I believe you need to have someone in overall strategic charge of a department or an authority. And yes, the Green Party has a dual leadership, but you ask any man on the street, they couldn't name them. At least in this authority, when someone says who is the cabinet member for X, Y or Z, they should know who that person is, or at least stand a good chance, because it can only be one of 34, not 2 or 3 of 34. And actually, I think that enhances accountability, that you aren't trying to pass the book, say, oh, that wasn't my element of the portfolio, that was yours. That isn't how politics works. At the end of the day, I set the strategic direction, I'm accountable. If I get something wrong, I expect every single one of you, and indeed my members on this side, to hold me to account. But trying to have a dual leadership role, Mr. Mayor, just means that no one takes accountability, and that isn't going to work in this authority. In respect of having a younger generation involved, I think we have a superb track record of that in the past 5 months of that. So we have, if I just go around the room, we have Councillor Baxter Payne as Chair of the Housing, Environment and Health OSP. We have Councillor Markham, another 2021 intake as Chair of Licensing and soon to become a Cabinet Member. We have Councillor Kovetkovic, who is Chair of Planning. We have Councillor Walsh, another 2021 member, who is Chair of Business, Planning and Regeneration OSP. So we have a number of... I'm trying to remember, I've got the initials in my head, I'm just trying to remember what they stand for. So we have got a track record on that. We have to acknowledge that not every councillor wants a leadership role. Some councillors are quite happy being on the back benches, doing the scrutiny, and more importantly, actually, in my view, a lot of them are just quite content doing their casework, because that's where they get the most joy in life. That's fine. Don't make someone go into a leadership role if they don't want it. It's about putting square pegs into square holes, not about putting square pegs into round holes. So I think this is a way forward. And if it is voted through tonight, Mr. Mayor, then even though it is a leader's appointment, I will announce who, assuming it goes through, Mr. Mayor, I will announce who I'm appointing as Cabinet support members. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So, there being no other speakers, it having been moved and seconded, item 13A to appoint Cabinet support members. Can I have a show of hands, please? All those in favour? Against? Abstentions? So, all in favour apart from one abstention. Thank you. That is suitably passed. Councillor Wilson, if you would like to announce.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't want to do it and preempt the result of the vote, but I can confirm that Councillor Evans will be appointed as Cabinet support member to Councillor Markham in the role of Public Services. I think that's eminently sensible. He still has a lot of service left in him to give, and he knows his portfolio and will be able to break Councillor Markham in gently, I would hope, and provide the support that way. And you've got a large project to fill, Councillor Markham, because we've got the physical activity hub to do, amongst other things. And also, I'm appointing Councillor Baxter Payne as the Cabinet support member for Planning and Regulation. I will, of course, keep it under review, Mr. Mayor, and inform Council in due course of any further appointments.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Right, so if we can now move on to 13B, appointment of electoral registration officer, deputy electoral registration officer, and scale of election staff fees. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I shall try to be brief. This is essentially a procedural item. It appoints the Chief Executive as the Electoral Registration Officer and our relatively new Head of Elections as the Deputy Returning Officer and the Deputy Electoral Registration Officer. We have to have one, and it's standard practice to have the most senior officer in the authority as the Returning Officer and the Registration Officer, which indicates just what importance we give to the democratic process. And what's different about this year's report, which is really significant, it's another example of our corporate governance reform, is we've actually done some proper benchmarking on the fees that are paid for election work, because in previous years it was a bit of a finger in the air job. So now we're going to have fair pay at competitive rates. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I shall move the report.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor. Any member? No, it is very much procedural. So is there any dissent to that? Or do we take it that's unanimous? Yep, all in agreement, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Takes us on to 13C, Leisure Development at Bedworth Physical Activity Hub. Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, it's no secret that this council has been awarded £15 million by the government to support our leisure facility proposals for Bedworth. These are extremely important plans to cut obesity rates in the borough and to improve well-being in one of the most deprived communities in the West Midlands. This is another example of the government's commitment to level up our borough and to make sure that our residents have the same opportunities as those in the more affluent parts of the country. I would like to draw to Council's attention that since Cabinet I have been informed that Sports England actually want to use this council as a case study to demonstrate to other local authorities in the UK how we should be doing the job of putting up new leisure centres. I would like to reiterate my thanks to Kevin Hollis, to Katie and our sports development team, and of course our consultants at Strategic Leisure Limited, who have managed to get this over the line for us. Like I say, I did move this at Cabinet. I was then told that it had to come to full council because it's a financial matter, given that we've got to add an extra £500,000 to the capital programme. That's a lot of money. But basically, if we agree to do this, what we would do is enable the project to go to Reba stages 4A and 4B, and we hope to be able to submit a planning application to the planning department at some point in the next few months, depending on how this goes. But I do feel that it's important for us as a council to show our commitment to Bedworth as councillors. I therefore like to ask that this vote is recorded.
Yeah, enough of you have indicated it will be a recorded vote. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor. A great legacy you're leaving. And is there a seconder for that? Councillor Markham.
I'm happy to second it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So, any member? Councillor Condacor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project has been going on for quite a lot of years and is a very important project. It's probably the most important development in leisure we'll do for a decade. And it has always had total cross-party support. When it went to all the committee meetings, etc., even councillors in Camp Hill and Weddington recognised Bedworth needed a new leisure centre. And so I do hope this is accepted, that it has always been a combined project. And obviously it's great that it's making such great progress. It's great that Councillor Evans is mentioning obesity and health, because you see the life expectancy problems we've got in this borough, and leisure is one of the ways we can actually get out of the low life expectancy, combined with better health care and better GPs, all the other things. But actually being more active is just so important. And I'm really pleased we had a presentation from Kevin Hollis and the consultants last week, and I'm really pleased they're talking about it being an activity hub, not just a building you go in to swim, because people need to really be going here to the park and doing some activities. So I'm really positive about this. And just a few details I really would like to be right to sort of be the icing on the cake. One, clearly is this is going to be a very sustainable building in terms of heating the pool. Air source heat pumps, exactly the right technology for heating a swimming pool, heat out the air, small amount of electricity, works beautifully. The one thing that really disappoints me is that this building will still be using a small amount of gas for the space heating. So I do hope that the efforts are made to make this a fossil fuel-free exemplar building. I think we're almost there, but we've just let down the side with this one element. And when we built the Pingles, we had to rip the boilers out after a few years and put combined heat and power boilers in because there wasn't enough forethought in that aspect. So I do hope we get that right. And also we've got obesity and health issues across the borough. And so I really do hope we sort out the public transport issues. I know we've got some money set aside for the green corridors into the town centre. And I really hope we get the bus services sorted and hopefully the train services, the links to the railway station. So actually people from across the borough and hopefully Stockingford station one day and Wellington and all sorts of places can get the train or the bus and go to this leisure centre, because so many people get more benefit from the active travel, walking down, getting a bus, going, and many people haven't got the opportunity not to use the buses or the train to get to a leisure centre. So I do hope this is the greenest leisure centre in the country. I fully support the project, but just want those little dots, I's dotted and T's crossed to make it as good as it absolutely could be, so we're not ripping stuff out later when we stop using gas for heating. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, we're in full support of this, obviously, because we've been trying to do it for a number of years. And I would like to see it, I know it's being built in Bedworth, obviously, but it will be a benefit to everybody within the borough and further afield. It was good to see the presentation the other night. I know that Councillor Evans was a bit nervous in case people come up with too many suggestions. I have sent in a couple to Kevin Hollis, who is going to forward a few on. Although the design was fairly good, I do think it could be improved upon with things like green roofs and living walls, things like that. I have made them concerns known at the meeting and sent them in as well. But yeah, in full support of it. Hope that it gets done fairly quickly, and looking forward to backing this tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson, you indicated?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This does actually, whilst the leisure aspect is Councillor Evans's portfolio, the green corridor aspect is actually within my portfolio. One of the first things I was faced with, even before I took control officially on the 19th of May, was a question from Simone and Brent is, are we submitting a luff bid, and if so, what for? Because the deadline is whatever it was, and it was exceedingly close. And my first answer was yes, and the next words out of my mouth was it has to be for Bedworth. Because Bedworth, transforming Nuneaton has a lot of work to do, and we've been very successful in transforming Nuneaton, but we also now need to kickstart the Transforming Bedworth agenda. And I can actually confirm that we have a Transforming Bedworth meeting this Friday, where this is actually on the agenda, actually, to go through that. And I think that highlights the importance that this new administration places on our borough. It isn't just about Nuneaton. There is also Bedworth and Borkington that we have to focus on. And the reality is, yes, there was cross-party support before the election, but there was also an inheritance of a £500,000 black hole in terms of being able to afford a new leisure centre, or physical activity hub as we are now calling it. If we did not find that £500,000 just to get past REBA stage 4A and 4B, there would be no new leisure centre. And we had not got that money, contrary to what the Labour leaflets at the May election said. They might as well have put on my desk when I first came in the same letter that the Chief Secretary to the Treasury left in 2010. I'm sorry, there is no money left, because that was the reality of the situation. And even if we had borrowed the rest of the money for the outfit costs and building, we could have been looking at £300,000 interest payments a year, because we did not have the funds that Labour said were there. So the luff bid which we put forward saved this council and having a Bedworth leisure centre. That is the stark reality that we had to face. But we have actually got there, and there were some naysayers who said, oh, you've got a poor bid, it's not going to get through. But I tell you what, Mr Mayor, I was awfully chuffed at the LEP meeting on Monday when I sat there, and every other member of the LEP sat there saying our bid didn't win, but ours did. And There were certainly some eyebrows which were raised about that, and I think Brent and I sat there quietly, well, I wasn't quietly smiling to myself, I was actually quite happy about it. But it was pleasing to actually say that Nuneaton and Bedworth is here, we are part of Warwickshire, and we need regenerating too, and I'm going to make no apologies for banging that drum wherever I go. I think they're already getting sick of me, Mr Mayor, but that's my job. But I can inform Council that the element which is under my portfolio, preliminary work is already starting. So I have asked officers to look at where we can work with the County Highways team in terms of the green corridor into Bedworth, because ultimately, whilst it is pedestrianised, it is still the public highway and that falls under county's jurisdiction. I have spoken to the leader of the County Council and the portfolio holder there, and they have agreed to take on those works and project lead that particular area so that our officers can get on with what they know best, which is about leisure and delivering that. So we are working now more collaboratively with the County Council, rather than pulling the drawbridge up and saying, you're the county, you're the borough, and never the twain shall meet. Actually, what we need to recognise is this is a partnership. We both have responsibilities to this borough. I will hold county to account for their responsibilities to this borough, but we need to actually work in partnership. Trying to deliver it all ourselves would have meant we deliver nothing. By working together, we actually will deliver something. And whilst there are some of these ideas coming forward about green roofs, living walls, etc., the reality is they cost money. That is money we don't have. And we have to stick to a budget, something I know which is a foreign concept to the opposition. But the reality is we had £15 million from government to do this, and it was carefully costed out by Kyle and his team. If we add a green roof, that will inflate the cost. If we add a living wall, that will inflate the cost. And actually, the scientific evidence isn't actually really there to demonstrate that they make a significant difference to the green agenda at the moment. We need to stick to budget, and we can't keep going back to government and saying, oh, we want this, we want that. We have to work in partnership and stick to our word, Mr Mayor, and actually deliver what we said. And that is the approach that this administration will take. No pie-in-the-sky ideals. We'll get on with delivering what the residents of Bedworth expect, which is a new leisure centre on budget. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Downs?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say, as a councillor for Bedworth, yeah, I'm sure all of my colleagues will agree, massive thank you to Councillor Evans and his team. Now, I'm 53 years old, make no bones about my age, yeah? The leisure centre in Bedworth is as old as me, and look at the state of me. Yeah, I'm not being funny, but if it wasn't for Councillor Evans and his team, who have literally pulled it out of the bag this year, since May, we wouldn't be having a new activity hub, leisure centre, green corridor, call it what you want. This is why this administration was voted in. From me, personally, thank you.
No one else has indicated, so as a recorded vote has been called for, can I ask Councillor Evans if he wants to reply before we go to the recorded vote?
I will just come back on a few things, Mr Mayor. For once, I sort of do agree with Councillor Kundaka. We do need to be more innovative in the ways that we get people out there exercising. So, for example, you know, we've got to have measured walks. We're just about to open the new BMX track facility in the Miners' Welfare Park. I know that Councillor Gutteridge has been doing a lot of the work on that with me. And Councillor Kundaka is right. I mean, you've only got to look at me to look at obesity rates in Bedworth. You know, and I agree, we've got to be more innovative and we've got to think out the box on how we actually get people out of the door to exercise. In terms of the, you know, CO2, fossil fuels, you know, all this Extinction Rebellion rubbish, you know, this is going to be one of the most environmentally friendly leisure centres in the UK when it's up and built. That's why Sports England is using the Nuneaton and Bedworth Borough Council as a case study for future leisure centres. And whilst I thank the Leader of the Opposition for some of the proposals he's put forward, like the living rules, etc., as the Leader of the Council has said, that costs money. And we did look at those proposals. We were even going to have a rooftop football pitch at one stage during the project, but it just massively inflates the cost, and you know, we want to deliver this project on budget. Some of these ideas are great. I mean, I know Councillor Watkins, for example, referenced the he wanted a Northern Relief Road, for example, at the last cabinet, but the reality is that would cost £100 million to build, and we would need you know, to build a lot of houses in Section 106 contributions to fund that. I'll give way to the Leader of the Opposition.
Sorry, you're raising a point of order, or did you just want to...
Point of explanation.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Right, so I've heard the Leader of the Council say that he knows that the living walls and green roofs are going to be too expensive. Well, I only mentioned it the other day, so they must have been quick to get the quotes in. Councillor Evans has just said that it's fact that £100 million for a Northern Relief Road. It's not fact at all, because the quote I had off an officer from Warwickshire County Council was about 35 million. So it's not fact at all, because it has never, ever been costed up. So, point of an explanation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Evans, yeah, if you'd like to carry on.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his point, and I understand that for a similar project that was delivered in Rugby, the Rugby Relief Road, that was costing near to £70 million, and a Northern Relief Road in the Nuneaton would be a lot bigger than I'm not too sure if the Rugby Relief Road has even been built. I don't live in the area, but I'll give way to the Leader of the Opposition again.
It needs to be a point of explanation.
It is explanation, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Again, Councillor Evans says it was a fact that it would cost £100 million. It's a fact that it hasn't even been costed up. That is a fact, not a fact that it's going to cost £100 million. And I'm not cared what they did in Rugby.
Yeah, it's semantics, and we don't pick, and it's... We'll go back to Councillor Evans. Thank you.
I think my point is on the record, Mr. Mayor, and the Leader of the Opposition's point is will be in the minutes, I'm sure. So yes, I will be following this the development of this facility very closely. I've got absolute confidence in Councillor Markham in taking this project forward, and I look forward to being there when the red ribbon is going to be cut. I'm not too sure if it will be in time for Councillor Clark's mayoralty, but we will try.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I'll want to use it on the first day, so there you go. No more speakers, so I think we now need to move to the recorded vote. Brent, if you can go through the names, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you could indicate whether you are for, against, or whether you wish to abstain when I call out your name. Thank you. Councillor Beetham. Councillor Brown. Councillor Clark. Councillor Cooper. Councillor Croft. Councillor Kvetkovich. Councillor Downs. Councillor Evans. Councillor Golby. Councillor Guttridge. Councillor Hammersley. Councillor Harbison. Councillor Hartshorn. Councillor Hocking. Councillor Kenner. Councillor Condacor. Councillor Llewellyn Nash. Councillor Markham. Councillor Pandare. Councillor Baxter Payne. Councillor Phillips, apologies. Councillor Rudkin. Councillor A. Sargent. Councillor J. Sargent. Councillor J. Shepherd is apologies. Councillor T. Shepherd is apologies. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smith. Councillor Tromans. Sorry. That's Councillor M. Tromans. Councillor R. Tromans. 4. Thank you. Councillor Walmsley is, apologies. Councillor Walsh. 4. Councillor Watkins. 4. And Councillor Wilson. 4. That's unanimous.
So that is unanimous. Thank you. If we can now move on to 13D, pay policy statement. Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is another procedural item. It is to approve the pay policy statement that is in the agenda. It's a curious feature of local government in this country that we have to vote on things we don't really have very much choice in approving, and we are required to do this under the Act. And another curious feature I would just highlight to Council is that this is a backward-looking statement before any members pointed out, so it refers to the old dual-headed structure of Chief Executive, whereas now we have one splendid Chief Executive fulfilling the post. So next year's pay statement will refer to the new structure. So, but it's been approved by the Employment Committee, and it'll allow us to get on with the HR reform that we're going to do. So I shall move the report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll second that and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Any member? Nope. Is there any dissent? I take it then that's agreed unanimously. Chris, did you want to come back? No? Nope, no dissent. Unanimous. Right, so that's passed. So we're on to 13E. Gambling Act, Statement of Licensing Policy. Councillor Markham, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to propose and move the recommendation as printed at 13A, please.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Evans.
I'm happy to second what Councillor Markham has proposed. As I understand it, this is just something that we have to reapprove every 4 years. We do work alongside the other 4 district councils in Warwickshire, and we are all under the same agreement.
Thank you, Councillor. Any member? No, again, really procedural. So is there any dissent at all? Do we take Councillor Condacor?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to vote against this. Thank you.
In that case, we'll do a show of hands. So all those in favour? All those against? Abstentions? So that's all in favour, apart from one against. So that's passed. Moves us on to item 14, recovery of non-domestic rates and council tax. This is really, again, just administrative function to add a name to the list of those people. And I would ask for Councillor Croft to introduce it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm being very dull tonight. I move that the names printed in the addendum are able to represent the county in court for the recovery of debt. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will second that, and just to apologise to Council that this has come as an urgent item. It was something which we didn't feel we could leave until the next Council, so it's been brought forward as urgent, just so that we have all the I's dotted and T's crossed and can actually get on with the business of debt recovery in the Council. Not that I have any interest in that with my employment. I just administer it. I don't actually prosecute.
Thank you for clarifying that it is an urgent matter. We have taken advice. It is in order. And so I would ask if there is any member wishes to speak. No. In that case, is there any dissent? Unanimous then? In agreement? Yep, everybody's nodding. That's passed unanimously then. Thank you very much. Right, that concludes the business that's on the agenda. I would just like to thank everybody for their attendance and say that, as customary at Christmas, there is some light refreshment in the Mayor's Parlour for members that would like to join me. Other than that, please, as we won't meet like this before Christmas, have a very good Christmas and New Year. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all in the new year. Thank you.